Hello, I'm Jothy Rosenberg, host of the Designing Successful Startups podcast, where today's guest is Giles Taylor.
Went to sea for a few years, worked on oil tankers and, ro-ros, and even did some corporate yacht stuff, and swallowed the anchor, as they call it, came ashore. And I worked as an engineer for General Dynamics, building nuclear submarines.
Giles is a supply chain professional with over 40 years of progressive operations management and consulting experience. This unusual mix of experiences enables him to incorporate the shipper's and consultant's perspective into solutions. He started Trans Solutions in 1998 to help companies improve their transportation operations and lower costs. Trans Solutions has completed multiple projects that include all modes and methods of transportation of goods with spends from $1 million to $1 billion. Giles has personally conducted and completed hundreds of transportation audits and assessments that have saved companies in excess of $450 million. And here is Giles. Hey, Giles.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm good. It's good to see you.
You too.
I don't ever see you in your, office situation, because we're usually, swimming or sailing or doing something.
Right. Yeah, we're all relegated back to this for 5 days a week, right?
Yeah, 5 days a week. Yeah. Okay, so I always like to start by asking people, where are you originally from and where do you live now?
I guess you could say I pretty much grew up in a suburb of Boston since I was 5 or 6 years old. And I lived
And that town was?
Suburb of Boston. Although I've not always been here. Left and came back.
Yeah, so you were raised in Framingham and you were away for a while. We met you first in California.
That's correct, yeah.
And then by the strangest coincidence, I was asked to come back to Boston and picked Newton to live in. And you decided that it was the right thing to do to come back, and you picked Newton.
It's more coincidental, actually, Jeffy. We bought a house a block away from the house you were living in.
It is kind of strange. I want to spend most of our time focused on Trans Solutions. What was the evolution that got you to the point where you knew a lot about logistics, and then you were kind of ready to make this leap and do something on your own? But before then, because you went to Mass Maritime Academy, and I don't believe that when you went there you were thinking about logistics.
Well, actually, it is logistics. It's supply chain. When I got into the business, by the way, it was called operations management, which is really a military term. Then it became logistics, and then it became supply chain. So it's gotten more robust as the decades have gone by. So if you think about it, I went to Mass Maritime to become an officer on a ship, and it's either the engine room or the deck. I was an engineer. So I was an officer on a ship that was transporting goods, from one country to another. So that's kind of the beginning of your supply chain trail.
Yeah. Okay. And from there?
So I went to sea for a few years, worked on oil tankers and, ro-ros, and even did some corporate yacht stuff, and swallowed the anchor, as they call it, came ashore. And I worked as an engineer for General Dynamics, building nuclear submarines. That was probably a common transition. Maybe you come off the sea and you go into a power plant, or doing something related to the sea. At the same time, I went to get my MBA at nights and weekends, and at Providence College. And at the end of that time, I had ambitions to manage people for some weird reason. Of course, I did that on ships, but I wanted to do a little bit more of that. So I started looking for work, and I was hired by a discount retailer in the region to become an industrial engineer, which really fits my personality because I'm a logical person. I like to figure out problems. And that's what that is. That is, installing and sending programs, streamlining processes, uh, justifying CapEx projects, just finding better, more efficient ways to do things. And I really enjoyed that. But I still wanted to manage people for some weird reason. So an opportunity came up at this one facility I was working at in New Jersey, and it just so happened that the general manager and I really hit it off. He became a great mentor of mine, and the number 2 position in that facility became available, and he suggested I apply for it. I did. I got it, and that was kind of operations management by baptism by fire, as they say, because I was responsible for 400 people, 3 shifts, fully automated warehouse. But again, really enjoyed that. And working with building teams and things like that and learning a lot of stuff. From there, I was recruited by the person who brought me into that company to go work at EMI Music in California, in Los Angeles. And that's back in the day. I don't know if that's that's the case today, but back then, all the record labels had these distribution arms to house back then it was CDs and cassettes for the most part, and then distribute them. So there was maybe a dozen or 2 dozen record labels that belonged to that distribution company. And that's the one I worked for Capitol Records, Virgin Records, EMI Music. You might have heard some of these Chris Lewis records. So I went out there and I became director of distribution. So I ran the warehouse for the West Coast of the United States. And so I was and in that time, I was responsible for transportation as well, which I didn't have a lot of experience with. I engineered myself out of a job on that one, but I got promoted to be director of transportation of that same company. I did that for a few years, and then started a family, and then was recruited by West Marine, which is where your wife and my wife worked together, and we met as director of distribution again. And that was a relatively small company, but they were in the process of buying everybody up. So they grew threefold in 3 years. Pretty stressful job, just always going, and something new. So I was putting in a lot of hours, but I was learning just so much. It was just incredible. Great learning period in my life. That went on for a few years. And then again, I was promoted to director of transportation of that company. It was a much bigger company at that point than when I started. And I really got my feet wet on other parts of just transportation that I hadn't had experience before. Like we had a fleet of trucks and things like that. My wife, Claire, and I wanted to move back east and raise our kids there. So I started looking, went to the president, and I told them, and they said they gave me 6 months to find a job. And sure enough, I did. And I came back to Boston as vice president of operations for a company. I had a couple of pretty good offers. Staples was one of them. But I was a company officer in this one, so they enticed me with a lot of stock options and things like that. So I was in charge of everything there, transportation, warehousing, maintenance, call center, you name it, anything that had to do with operations in the company, the stores. And again, that was, more responsibility, a lot more to learn, and it really was helpful for me. But I always had this bug about this independent bug, I want to do it myself. I want to do it on my own. I want to see if I can do it on my own, that type of thing. I guess some people call that entrepreneurial. Maybe it is. I took a chance and I started Trans Solutions, and that was 26 years ago.
You have a gigantic music collection. Did you put that together while you worked at EMI?
It's an interesting thing. The music industry, I think, is probably like the publishing industry that nobody ever leaves. They just kind of move around from record label or distribution company. So we had this connection of people in my position for different record companies, and we would trade CDs and stuff like that. And there's a lot of free CDs that go out. To record labels and radio station, things like that. So we were no exception because I was at a high enough level. So I had friends at Warner and Sony Philadelphia and all that sort of stuff. So
So you're telling me that you didn't have to pay retail for all of those thousands of CDs you have?
no, it was all sweat. Like I had to work hard. For somebody in distribution, it was a benefit to us, but it was part of the job for people that are in sales and marketing. But they would have these things called road shows a couple times a year, and they would we'd go down to Dallas and rent the whole hotel, like 300-room hotel, and they would bring in all these bands, like you're going to promote this coming year, summer.
Oh, I see.
And
I just got the story a little bit mixed up, but yeah. But you got a chance to see lots of bands.
Yeah, I went to a lot of concerts, and I had a lot of artists and what have you. It was pretty fun.
Okay, so back to Trans Solutions, because what I'm curious about is so you made it clear part of your incentive was do it on your own and just make the jump and be an entrepreneur and try it. What was the unsolved problem that you were going to aim Trans Solutions at?
Yeah, that's a good question. So my background was pretty robust. I did engineering, I did operations management, I did transportation, right? So you could go off on any one of those, and I really debated that. I really liked the engineering stuff, the industrial engineering stuff and the warehousing stuff, bringing automation to distribution. It was very, very nascent at that time. There wasn't a lot of that going on. So it was kind of leading edge. But I had realized that, all the big consulting firms had divisions that were doing all that stuff. And I just figured it's going to be too competitive. The one thing that was happening, and I learned a great deal at EMI Music, was the parcel side. That is a unique kind of part of transportation because it's really an oligopoly with just UPS and FedEx. And back then there was RPS and a couple other ones, but pretty much they're the big dogs on the street, and then you throw DHL in there for the international part. But they really controlled pricing to a large extent. And what I had realized in both the EMI Music and the West Marine job, and also the VP of operations job, was it was this kind of neglected part of transportation that a lot of people didn't pay a lot of attention to. So they have a unique offer that nobody else has, and that is a guarantee to deliver packages on time. So they state what they're going to deliver it on. Like, for example, next day AM, got to get delivered by 10:30, with a few exceptions. If it doesn't, then you can get your money back. So there's a lot of people that were working for UPS and FedEx that started business at the same time doing that. So collecting those refunds, and they set up business, and they were pretty successful. So I thought that was getting pretty saturated. But what wasn't happening was the negotiation piece, or it wasn't. There wasn't a lot of players in that. And I said, I've done a lot of negotiating in up to this point, and although this is a little bit different, I've done it plenty of times, and I've saved my company lots and lots of money, millions of dollars. And I said, I think this is what I want to try. So I thought there was there was a space there at that time. It's 25 years ago now, and I thought that would give me the biggest opportunity to be successful, and I was right.
Okay, could you tell us exactly what Trans Solutions does?
Of course, when we started out, we just kind of did parcel stuff, right? And but you learn pretty quickly in consulting. You can't be a one-stop show, a one-man show on one product, because the same customers might come back to you and say, hey, well, can you do something on that? Or can you do something on that? Or really, more importantly, is you don't have business coming in all the time, right? So you have these gaps, so you have to kind of broaden your catalog of offerings. And so I had that experience and in transportation, so I could add things on that. For example, there's air, surface, and ocean or water transportation. So on surface, you might have heard of the term less than truckload. So that's like palletized freight. And then there's truckload, that'd be, full truckload. And then there's last mile, which, really came of age during COVID. There's Parcel, of course, and there's all kinds of other stuff too, like very kind of nuanced, sophisticated stuff. So we had to learn to do that stuff and become excellent at it. And we did. And so that broadened our, catalog of what we could offer, and then brought in more business because of that. So we do all modes of transportation, every kind of transportation you can imagine. Some really basic stuff and some really pretty sophisticated stuff. So we grew that side, but the engineering side of me, the person who likes to figure out problems, never wanted to be in the engineering part. So that's the other half of the business. So we do engineering. So that could be something as simple as, hey, can you write a job description for a transportation manager for us? Or can you give us some guidance on, what do they have for automation transportation out there? To as sophisticated as tracking a tank that holds drug substance. That's the basis of your drugs. Keep track of it around the world. So in this particular project, there was 1,500, almost 1,600 of these tanks that cost $200,000 a piece to make. So if you just lost a few of those, it's a big issue. But they didn't track it. They tracked it manually, like get on the phone and start calling type of thing. And that was partly due to the software that they were using, but partly due to nothing really existed to do that. So if you think about this, Jyoti, and I know that you're going to be thinking about this after our call because you like to noodle these things out too. Here's a tank that costs $200,000 to make. It's got $1 million of product in it, and you need to know where it is at all times. GPS doesn't work, all right? Your basic satellite system doesn't work, right? So we had to figure out, how can we track a tank that's sitting 100 feet under the ground in a Faraday box freezer, right? So it's got stainless steel all the way around the freezer, so you can't send a regular signal through there. A high frequency signal through there. It has to be a low frequency signal. Now, how do you do that? So it took several months, but we came up with a pretty cool solution. And it was, 100% traceable of the tank. And in addition to that, it's like any other project, there's always a scope creep. They want to know how much product was in the tank and what the temperature was and things like that. So those are add-ons, but pretty cool solution.
I will think about that. I will think about that. Hi, the podcast you are listening to is a companion to my recent book, Tech Startup Toolkit: How to Launch Strong and Exit Big. This is the book I wish I'd had, as I was founding and running 8 startups over 35 years. It's like a memoir of my entrepreneurial journey. I tell the unvarnished truth about what went right and especially about what went wrong. It's for the founder, the CEO, and wannabe founders of tech and non-tech startups. You could get it from all the usual booksellers and also from the publisher at Manning.com. I hope you like it. It's a true labor of love. Now back to the show. So is the basic idea that people come to you because they feel like they could spend less money on shipping and ask you to help them do that because they just feel like they're spending too much. This is where you figure out how to optimize all of their product on, to try to fill a truckload or be partial shipment and combined with other people's partial shipments. I'm just trying to sort of suss out what are the big swings you can take to save somebody a lot of money on shipping?
There's 1,000 ways to skin the cat, right? It really depends on the particular situation. We have a call later today with a big company anyway, let's say we see him on Sunday TV all the time, okay? I can't share the name. But anyway, they came to us and they wanted a forecasting system on spend. So that'd be on our engineering side. Within like a month, I think we asked for a bunch of data when we get that, so that we can figure out how we're going to do that solution. So part of the data is looking at contracts with, FedEx and UPS in this case, and DHL, and we have a massive database of benchmark rates, right? Like as a third party, we get to see lots and lots of rates. So we run it through there. We see how good their pricing is, and it looked like it was okay. We could do better. So we went back to them and say, well, here's how we'll do this project. But did you know? And we think we can save you X factor on the transportation of your parcel. And they go, oh, we're not worried about that. We're kind of doing that ourselves. Anything, one thing led to another. We got the project. We saved them a ton of money. But after that, there's more money because, what we're talking about is getting a better rate, right? And then them executing that. But if you optimize the freight, because when you look at the data, and you know this, right? You're a data guy. You look at the data, you can find other things that you're not necessarily looking for. So you can optimize the freight. So some of the things that we do is we would call cross mode. So maybe it's parcel should be LTL or LTL should be parcel. Cross service. So maybe you're shipping at second day air and it can go ground. Maybe you can consolidate shipments. There's a whole list of things that we go through and find that. And so we have a whole punch list that we're going to show this today in this call of stuff we can do later, right? Of optimizing their freight. So getting a rate's one thing. When we do that for all modes, optimizing it is a different thing. And usually, I don't know if I've ever come across a company that had some sophistication of their transportation, which means, they're using more than one mode, one service. They have some nuances to it, that we didn't find those opportunities. Yeah, so it's not just about rates, it's about optimizing the freight too.
So how have you funded Trans Solutions?
Well, I'll sweat fingernails. I would say self-funded, pretty much. Occasionally line of credit, but pretty much self-funded and line.
And some of these databases, are they all ones that you've developed yourselves, or do you have to buy some of this data?
No, we get it ourselves. But let's talk about the data a little bit because that's really important, and that's been a big evolution. So when we started, basically we did everything on Excel, right? And even Access, right? Way back when. But and we were doing, smaller companies, spend say under $20 million. So you can digest that in an Excel spreadsheet for the most part, but then we got up to companies that spend like $150, $200 million on just Parcel. And those databases are huge. So you got to either put them in SQL or some kind of database management solution, or use Python to manipulate the data or whatever it may be. So we've evolved to that. But over the years, the pricing with the integrators, UPS, FedEx, DHL, is sophisticated. There's a lot of different charges that you have to account for. So it's not just the freight, there's fuel, and then what they call surcharges or accessorial charges, like a residential charge, a delivery area surcharge, a signature charge. There's hundreds of them. And you have to factor that in the analysis, because what those companies are really good at is kind of pulling the money out somewhere else and giving it to you where you ask. So if you don't know what to ask for it, you're going to miss it. So we had to develop a pretty sophisticated tool to be able to do that quickly. Because negotiation, we try to get it fast. Like, I don't want you sitting around for a couple of weeks and give me an answer back on this. I want it back tomorrow, in 2 days type of thing. So we needed to have a tool that could do it as fast or faster. And over the years, we developed that kind of a tool for Parcel and some other modes of transportation.
So 25 years or so. Have you made any mistakes?
A couple hours to list those out? Oh my God.
Well, just tell us a couple that were maybe scary.
Oh, well, I mean, yeah, there've been a few years I've not made any money. I lost a lot of money, and I had to go right into my savings and pull it out, and that gets scary. I mean, I think every small business owner has at some point in time worry about, can I make my payroll? Or can I pay my people? And that's not a comfortable position to be in. I mean, you're thinking what happens next month? I make this month, and what happens next month? So that's something where I go through a lot of fingernails. I have a friend actually, still have him. I met in California, who had a small business, and he said to me in an early age, like literally when I started my business, he said, you can either manage the business or you can be the business, right? And you have to choose which way you want to go. And that's something I didn't execute for many, many years later. But basically what he was saying is, you can either go do all the work or you can get people to do the work and manage it. And I chose the former, right? I did the work. Partly because I'm growing a business and, I don't have a lot of excess cash and things like that to be able to do that. But, you could go get some money to do that too. And that was, more of an evolution for me, to figure, okay, I need to have these people on board and trained before the work comes. And that came to me later, right? So like when it comes, you got to get it done. But if you don't have the people to do it, then you're in trouble. So, that's a sunk cost. And you don't like that as a small business owner, but, it's a reality. So I think that had caused a lot of mistakes, things that I could have done better. Marketing, I don't know that. I don't know that piece of business. And then I've tried, I think, everything under the sun, and nothing's really worked. But I think, if I had some really good advice on that, I would try to get that. And, salespeople, so the one thing with a small company is you're doing the work as opposed to managing it. You do the work. You don't have time to go do the sales, right? Because you got to get the work done. So there's always a gap that you're kind of creating. So that was a learning curve that took, well over a decade into the company, before I got that under control, right? So there's some hiring, that's always hard to do. It's a 50-50 proposition maybe, to get the right person.
I agree.
So one thing I did is I said, after hiring some, people that were not the right fit for this company, I said, okay, I'm just going to train them. I'm just bring them in out of school, train them, do it the way I like to do it. Then there's no conflicts. There's no, we used to do it this way and all that sort of stuff. And that's really kind of the method I've been taking. And that's worked out.
What schools are you tending to bring people from?
I've hired a lot of people from Northeastern, BU, Mass Maritime, my alma mater.
So are you taking advantage of the wonderful fifth year that Northeastern has for people doing, much more serious internships than other schools do?
Absolutely. Yeah. And a little bit more, because I do a lot of teaching over there, guest lecturer. So I get to see the person. Like, for example, I taught a class the end of this semester at Northeastern, and usually I just kind of finish up and leave, and they leave, right? But occasionally somebody comes up to me. Well, two people came up to me in this particular class, and they said, hey, I wanted to pick your brain about a couple things. And, they knew that, they were seniors, but they really kind of knew transportation. They had the right terminology and things like that. I go, oh, that's impressive. Anyway, this was about a project in Mexico, intermodal project, putting containers on the rail and bringing it up to the United States. And that's a little bit over my skis. I mean, I didn't have a lot of experience in intermodal in Mexico, but I knew people who did. And so I went to them and I brought it to them. And that, I think the difference between some of the other schools I see this at Mass Maritime, at Maine Maritime, and Northeastern. These kids want to work. They can't wait to go work. And you can just see that as soon as you hire them.
That's good to hear. That's really good to hear. So now you're in the process of being acquired. How has that process gone?
Have been acquired. It ended up going well, but getting there, not going well. So I think it's probably 4 years ago, I was at least getting one call a month from somebody wanted to buy the company. A lot of them were looking for the Parcel stuff, and other ones were looking for the consulting stuff. But so I was getting a lot of calls, but I was just, I wasn't calling them back or anything like that. But I was at the age where I'm thinking, okay, I got to have an exit plan here. start planning this now instead of last minute. So I called a friend of mine from high school who is a venture capitalist, and I said, "Can you help me with this?" And he said, "Oh, sure." And so he said, "Well, pick a couple and let's go interview them and see what we got." So we met and these M&A companies, and so we talked after the meetings, and he said, "Why don't you just do it to see what the company's worth, right? It's not going to cost you a lot of money." So I did, and one of the things about consulting is the multiple's not huge; it's like under one, because you're always bringing in new business, basically. To a lot of extent. So I said, "Well, that was a little bit depressing," but then I got to thinking, "Okay, I'm going to do it. Let's see what It's not a lot of money. Let's see how it happens." And I couldn't have been more disappointed. I mean, really, really disappointed in who they were bringing me. I'll give you a couple of examples. It's just ridiculous. And I can't believe they would even go peddle this kind of stuff. But one person, first of all the calls that he took are like Zoom, but with the background faded out, but they were in his car. Everyone was in his car. You could tell. He was talking about a concept that really wasn't fully structured or formed. It kind of spitballing a lot of things, and didn't have white papers or anything like that. Introduced me to a couple other people, and they didn't have anything either. It's kind of like this concept they were talking about. Hadn't fully formed it. Another person. I have to laugh about this stuff because it's really absurd. She said, I'm not sure what her background, but I guess it was business or something like that. And she had went to work for a car moving company, right? So when you relocate, they move your car from California to Boston or whatever. And she had worked for that company for a couple of years and kind of learned the business, and she was going to buy the business. But then COVID happened and nobody was moving around, right? So that company, I don't know, went out of business or shrunk. She comes to me. This is the offer. You're going to hire me for 2 years, and you're going to pay me like a crazy high salary with a bonus. And I might buy your business in 2 years. So, it was after that call, I just lost it. And I called up the M&A company and I said, I can't believe you told me you're going to send these people and blah, blah, blah. And I really let them have it. So anyway, in a couple of weeks, they put another person on the account, and he was young, kind of newer to it, but he was eager. And he, within a month, he brought me a couple legitimate opportunities. So we went down the road it got to due diligence, so looking at the financials and stuff like that. But let me give you a little bit of backstory to this. So I had a client in California for 13 years, and they're a GPO, General Purchasing Organization. So they go buy stuff for you, office supplies, furniture, labor, whatever it is. So they had one category was transportation, but they really didn't have that developed. So they had hired Transolutions, and the model was basically do a couple projects, learn what they're doing, and then take that on, and that becomes a new category, and then the third party goes away. But they couldn't keep anybody in that position. They either left the company or they moved in somewhere else in the company. So they kept us around because the business was coming in. And finally, they hired this one guy for that category, and he was really good, smart, quick learner, and eager. And we hit it up. We became friends. But I trained him for 5 years, learning all kinds of freight. So anyway, he had a parting with that company, and got a severance for several months and things like that. And then he didn't have a job. But I said, hell, this is my opportunity to kind of sit back a little bit, right? Bring somebody in, knows what to do, knows what I like to do, and kind of run the business for me, do the business for me. So I made him an offer, and I couldn't offer him a huge salary, but I could offer him a good bonus. So that bonus was revealed in the due diligence and they came back and say, "What? You're giving this person what percentage of the net profit?" The deal's over. They pulled the deal. I mean, we were pretty close, and they pulled it because of that. So anyway, I kept him appraised of it because I'm not going to leave him in the lurch. And I told him, and he said, "Okay." He came back to me a couple of days later and said, "Can I buy the business?" So I go, "Well, you know what they offered, which was well over what I thought it was going to be." "Yeah, I know. Give me a couple of weeks and see what I can do." And get back in a couple of weeks. He said, "I can give you some money. You'll have to loan me the rest of it. But I could, pay it up 3-4 years." Did the deal. That's who bought the company in January.
Oh, that's who bought it.
So it was good.
Well,
What really benefited me is, I've had this business for 25 years, and it's known in the business. They Trade Solutions, I know who those guys are, type of thing. If I had gone the other route, it would have been absorbed into that other company. But this way, Trade Solution lives on. It kind of my legacy.
I think it sounds. I didn't know that's what you had done. It's great. I mean, you know him, you trust him. He, for a while, he'll keep checking in with you on some of his decisions and run them by you. It's kind of like being chairman of the board.
I have to stay on 3 years in the agreement, but it's good. I like it. I mean, and I'm really glad he was the one. He brought business in day one.
Well, you picked the right guy.
We were assessing this one particular project just this week. I think it was Monday or maybe it was Friday. And I said, "Well, how do you see it?" And literally, it was exactly how I saw it. Exactly. So, I mean, I just have a great deal of comfort in knowing he's going to be right.
Well, I've saved the most important question for last, which is, okay, so doing this and all the ups and downs takes a lot of grit. Where do you think your grit comes from?
You gave me a hint of that the other day. Grit. I didn't know if I have grit. That's what I'm thinking about. I'm probably going to reveal something I've never revealed to anybody. But growing up, my parents were very bright, and my older sister's bright. I remember being at the dinner table. They'd be talking about something. What the hell are they talking? Like, I was just way over my head. I kind of felt like I needed to catch up. Like a step behind. And I hung out with smart kids in high school, and I always felt like I was like a step behind there, and I had to constantly had to prove myself. I was very shy when I was a kid, like ultra shy. I was, bright red hair, freckles, a weird name. It was tough. Somewhere along the way, the path, you get it. You get like, hey, I can do this. I can do it. And if you can build off of that, then I think you can do just about anything. And I know you're the same kind of guy, Jeffy. So sorry about that, but I always felt like I was kind of a step behind, and I need to work harder to get there. So I embraced challenge. Like, this is something new. I want to do it. This is an uncomfortable situation. I want to do it. And I got to the point where I'm a pretty competitive person, as you know. And if I put my mind to something, I want to be number one. Whether it's, running a business or doing triathlons or swimming, whatever it is, I just have that mindset, which I think is formed over many years of kind of trying, failing, succeeding, and constantly pushing myself.
There's a common theme when I ask this question, that there is some sort of stress or like overwhelming challenge that people fight back against, and then they channel it somewhere along the way into being an entrepreneur. But they all have grit, and it comes from somewhere, and it's not just like I came out of the womb and I had it. Nobody feels that way. And it does explain some things, like, like how competitive I have to be to hang around with you.
Yeah, you went through the same similar stuff. I'll give you another example about that. Is as you know, I had a head injury skiing a long time ago, and subcranial hematoma. So I went to coma, the whole thing, and went to rehab and stuff like that. And I was in the Spalding Rehab, which is a big rehab hospital in Boston. And I was in the head injury wing. And there's 3 levels of that. So there's mild, moderate, and severe. And you're in there with everybody. And my roommate was severe. I went in as moderate. And we'd sit in these kind of, let's talk about our injury, round circles and things like that. And I think that kind of reinforced kind of who I was, that I'm not going to let this beat me.
And then you're back to skiing.
You're like, I've skied faster now. It's like stupid, but you finally.
I don't think when we're skiing, we're not taking unnecessary risks. We're taking the standard risks of that you have when you ski at a ski area, but we're not like whipping through trees at high speed.
True that. Yeah. Well, since that accident, I got an aversion towards trees and what tree. Skiing in the trees. But yeah, I mean, I think, you're probably right about that. I don't think maybe some people are born with it, but I haven't met anybody like that. But I think people, that I think they say, yeah, I'm going to let this defeat me or I'm not going to let it.
I agree with you that it's binary. I've always described the situation I was in as I was sitting on the peak of a roof after everything that happened with me. And I could have gone either way to like, feel sorry for myself and in a puddle of jelly, or fight back and start to accomplish things. You did the same thing.
Yeah. And I'm not being judgmental for people that go the other route. I just think it's to a large degree, it's a personal choice. And I'm not sure you're born with it.
Thank you very much. This has been fabulous. That's a wrap. Thanks for tuning into this week's episode of Designing Successful Startups. Check out the show notes for resources and links. Please follow and rate us at podchaser.com/designing successful startups. Also, please share and like us on your social media channels. This is Jotham Rosenberg saying TTFN, ta-ta for now.